person who is working with students in government schools. He will possibly bring in that experience. Subbu has a PG in computer science from IIT Mumbai, and he has worked as an engineer with 3 decades of experience in the IT field and with multinational companies. He's the founder director of a consulting company called Axe Code Consulting, which works with operating systems. Yeah, I can see. Now what, are we going to have a technical lecture? Well, let's see. You've got the abstract in any case, yeah? So he's also a senior member with the IEEE and the ACM. But as far as his interest goes, he's interested basically in the question of how children learn. And he was on the board of directors of an organization called Shikshana Foundation for 10 years. And this was an NGO that has adopted over 1,000 government schools for nurturing children's education. Students from our university have gone to Shikshana schools as part of their practicum experience. And one of the most interesting things that Subbu just shared with me just now, that Shikshana is an idea. And therefore, an idea can go beyond its organization. Subbu himself has stepped back from Shikshana at the moment, and he will speak to you on how certain things in education we can think about it in a new way to take it across the country. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think for all practical purposes, you can call me Subbu. If you're paying me a check, the name is Subramaniam. But I'll just go with the name Subbu, plain and simple. The talk which I'm going to give today is about meaningful interventions in primary education. Just to give a slight background, the primary education represents a transition between children and family it's the next stage of transition for children who move out from a family into the immediate society at large. Okay. So that is a context in which I'm going to talk about how is it that the society outside the family and outside the village environment can step in to assist children in making the transition from a family all the way to becoming a contributing member in the society. And this is a journey which takes about 12 years. If you look at the All India Educational Survey under the Ministry of HRD, they've just published their provisional statistics. This survey started in 2009, and the provisional numbers are just out recently. And it talks about how India has 230 million students in 1.3 million schools. And it's spread across the country. Every year, essentially at the first standard, there are between 25 to 28 million, depending on which year you take, 28 million children in our schools. Okay. Today, almost across the country, most of the children do get enrolled in some school or the other. So, assuming that 28 million covers almost all the children in this, it's a huge number. Okay. But as they journey through the education system and come out as full members of the society at the end of 12 years, this 25 to 28 million number reduces to about 4 to 5 million. Only about 4 to 5 million people come out of the 12th year to join the mainstream. Now, when I looked at number, I was totally shocked and scared. Okay. So I'm going to switch over to discussing the state level numbers, because these are very large numbers to deal with. Even if you look at the Karnataka state here today, okay, we roughly have about 1 million children who enter the pipeline every year, the first standard. And out of the 12th, if you look at it, about 1 in 6. 1 in 6 they come out of 12th. Now just imagine if you have a local bank in which you make a 12-year deposit. Okay, you deposit 1 lakh, and after 12 years the bank pays you 15,000 rupees. that bank wouldn't exist. Okay. We would not even tolerate these kind of results from a commercial entity. Yet, the situation has not changed very much over the years. Okay. Yeah. It's not audible? Okay. I'll talk louder. Can people in the back hear me now? Good. Okay. So if you look at in Karnataka, around 1 million students enter first standard, roughly. Okay, and hardly about 150,000 or 2 lakhs they emerge out of 12th at the end of 12 years of education. Now, you can use any model you want. You can use a social model, you can use an economic model, you can use a factory model or anything. But this situation is definitely not acceptable. We would not even tolerate this kind of failures to incorporate children in a company, not even a factory. Okay. We would not tolerate this. Yet we have been tolerating this for almost 6 decades. 6 decades, which is about 5 generations. We have been putting up with it. Which means whether you like it or not, we have implicitly accepted that this is a situation that we are willing to live with. Okay. So 12 years back, when I was discussing with one of my close friend about it, we decided to do something about fixing this problem. Okay. And what you see happening today, the fact that all of us have accepted the situation as it is, and we are willing to talk about it a lot but not do anything at the grassroots. It's because we have, by and large, and there are still a lot of people who disagree with this, but they are in the fringes. The vast majority of us have accepted that education of children is an economic activity. Okay. It is an economic activity which is subject to market forces that will automatically make for any lapses and gaps in this, and it will weed out all the inefficiencies which occur in the pipeline over a period of time. We have left the responsibility for educating our children to market forces, whether private or public. Okay. And we have accepted the result implicitly. So today, when in many of our public discussions, I keep seeing a lot of papers written, arguments made, and lectures made, debates made about how all we need is a sufficient amount of venture capital fund. Okay? A venture capital fund originated during the days of shipping, when you needed a lot of money to send a ship out to the East Indies, from Europe to the Indies. And the ship may or may not return, so you take a risk. Okay. So, and if the ship does return, then you make 5 times the amount. If the ship does not return, you let write off the entire amount. So that's the origin for venture capital. Today we have started applying the entire venture capital model to fund, and today it's become a fad of the day to talk about innovation in education, in school education. We fund a lot of innovative ideas. We even have reservations in the budget. About 10% of the budget is now reserved for innovative ideas in classroom teaching. Okay. And and we use these innovative ideas to reform the education. We know it's, and whether it's and there is a lot of investment going on in creating national standards and international standard curriculums for education. And there is also a lot of money being pumped into a quantitative assessment of learning in all our schools, so that we can rank people we can rank all these schools on the basis of the performance on internationally accepted standards of performance in this. Okay. Now, I see this application of economic models to a education system that is so unacceptably ineffective in catering to the needs of the children. Today, this is a huge weapon of mass distraction. We are so distracted by all these models and applying them inappropriately, and we think just putting more money into a broken model will result in a better result. So we started working on a different model. If you look at the current schooling system, if you look at the history of the origin of many of the schooling systems that we have today, they were designed to prepare children to enter civil service. Okay. There is a time when the government of India was to be formed, and local governance was in place, and there were not many people who would go ahead and manage the civil service. So you had a situation where Viceroy would call, the Viceroy and the officers would call school headmasters and say, do you have any bright student who's in 10th standard, you know? And the moment he passes 10th standard, just send him over, we will make him, we'll provide him a job as a clerk. In fact, even C.V. Raman worked as a clerk in a government office in Bengal. Okay. So all bright children would become clerks in government office, and then you would get a job for life. Or work in factories. If you look at why IIT Kharagpur was started, okay, one of the institutes of national importance, that's the latest politically correct term to refer to all these institutes. It was all created because there were many factories, many industries which did not have people whom they could hire to build. Okay. So a series of IITs were all created to produce engineers who could then man the factories. And this is true. If you look at how the local industries here were all created in the 50s, the IITs, the BHEL, BEL, HAL, and if you talk to your grandparents, they'll tell you about how many of these factories are all created, and the call would just go out, and people used to come in trains by hundreds, and they would queue up outside these factories, and many of them would get recruited for this. Okay. And the factories themselves were so short of educated people at that time that they themselves would create a colony and have a school within that colony, so that people would get educated in those schools and get absorbed into the factories. Then, today, if you look at applying the same model to the 25 million, 28 million who are coming out of our schooling system, I have seen even the best, most optimistic projection for civil service applicants, job applicants, and factory applicants. The number is about 12 million a year. Okay. The entire country can provide jobs for about 12 million a year at best. So we can go ahead and create an economic model which is 100% effective, where all your venture capital and everything, okay, are 100% successful, okay, in getting all these children through this one, and absorb everybody who comes out of the schooling system into all job occupations and the rest. It still leaves about 14 million people out on the streets. So that's the reason why I think the model is fundamentally broken. We cannot have a system, okay, that when it is perfect, pushes out more than half the number of children out of the streets. Okay. So, and when I get into these type of discussions, ideas keep flying in the Facebook and Twitter. Everybody knows that they have a solution for the problem, that we have it. And I've been through a lot of these discussions. Most of these discussions are around, when I start discussing about what is it that we are going to do to address this model, almost everybody has an answer. And when I say that the answer has to be that all the 25 million or 28 million children who are going to come out of the school needs to find a place in the society 100%. Okay, and that is when people look at me with a strange look in their eyes and say something is wrong here. Okay. Here is a madman, absolutely crazy. This is a pie in the sky dream. Okay. There is no way we as a society can go ahead and absorb 25 million people coming out of the schools into playing useful roles in society. No way. There is no economic or financial or social model that will do. Okay, so most of the stuff dies the moment I say 100%. Now, as an engineer, I have a background in a lot of working with a lot of systems at 2 scale massively. Okay, we are talking about very huge numbers. We are not talking about solving things in the small, etc. And I'll cite just 2 examples. Okay, one from my own industry experience, the other from my social sphere. One is the internet that all of us are familiar with. Okay. Today, internet is almost everywhere in the world. Almost everybody has it, they have access to it, and it has scaled massively. It caters to almost everybody without any distinction. It allows everybody to connect to everybody else, and it works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, round the year. Okay. And when it doesn't work, the Prime Minister wakes up. Okay. Okay, he cannot work. Okay, we have accepted it. We have accepted a 100% reach for internet and 100% availability for internet. Okay. So even after 100 years in electricity, we still don't have access to electricity. But internet has reached out even to the remotest corners of in India, where people do exchange. Today I think the latest fad is exchanging funny video clips over WhatsApp. And I have some of the friends out there in the villages do have access to some of these videos, which are going through WhatsApp and others. So that's one example. The other example is something that's about 10,000 years old. It's called the family. India is one of the 2 countries in the world where the family system has survived for over 10,000 years in the current. China is the other one. Okay. Both in China. And if you look back into the history, both of them are evolved closely, and they share many of the characteristics of these family units. And if you look at the Indian family unit, if you go travel all across India, and I was told that we do have people from all over India here. Okay. And you must have, when you travel over India, have you always observed this? That the family as a unit is prevalent almost everywhere. You've seen that? Okay. And you must have also noticed where the government is almost absent, commercial entities are almost absent, but families pitch in and make sure that whoever comes in gets absorbed and assimilated. You've seen that? Now, this system is more than 10,000 years old. And that has scaled. Today we are over 1.2 billion people, 15 crore families, 150 million households today. Whether the government works or not, families work. Okay. Families work. And when the Uttarakhand tragedy happened, or the latest Pune tragedy happened, who pitched in to help? Who pitched in to make sure that children were safe, women were safe? This is a family. The family, the immediate neighborhood. We did not have a national disaster management system. Okay. They came in much later. It was the people around who pitched in. Okay. So there are 2 examples, one from the economic sphere, the other from the social sphere, where we have managed to create systems that are massive, that are replicated all across India, okay, and which are extremely accommodative of different aspirations of people. Okay. So this, with this background, I had an organization called Sikshana Foundation that she introduced. We started designing. The Sikshana Foundation is essentially an idea. We started working with an idea, and we said we'll create a model that we'll share it across other organizations. And Sikshana Foundation was the first organization to start working with this model, and which allowed us to tease out many of the early problems in that model and bring it out. The model essentially works with treating a school as a social unit, not as an economic unit. Okay. So we have the 0 to 6 years children where family is very supportive. And when people make the transition at 6 years from the family to the school, we wanted to make sure that the school is accepting of every child, whatever be the background, and the same acceptance and accommodation that you normally find in any family is also made available to the children in those schools. And this essentially evolved. If you notice any family, for instance, whenever a new baby comes in, regardless of what the family was doing elsewhere, okay, you could be running a business, you could be teaching, you could be doing a lot of stuff. The moment a baby enters a family, the entire family revolves around the life of a baby. Everything gets rearranged. So that's accommodation. It's a very, very flexible structure for accommodation. So we wanted to make sure that the school is designed around accommodating children and their needs. Okay. Now, and within that particular accommodative, accepting environment, we wanted to see education, particularly learning, to be a social process. Okay. It is not an industrial process that you could go and put a thermometer and measure. It is not something that we started seeing that as a social process that happens naturally. Okay. That just like trees grow and animals grow, we wanted to see education and learning as a social process that naturally occurs within a child. As a result, whatever intervention that we have within the school environment is a facilitative intervention. It does not replace, it does not attempt to impose anything on child from outside. Okay. We had no pedagogy, we had no curriculum, okay. We had no teachers in the organization. The tagline that we created for the entire organization was nurturing, empowering, and improving government schools. Government of Karnataka at that time had a scheme where neighborhood people could come and adopt a government school and make sure that education happens in that school. And if you go to the government organization, they'll give you a sheet that says all the things which you can do. Okay, you can buy even today. If you go, you'll find that things. You can buy tables, benches, the desks. You can buy. You can take sponsor events. You can donate them books. You can donate all that stuff. You can build toilets. Very important. In fact, the number one, if you look at the top 5 things that the government wants you to do in the local school, is to go build compound walls and toilets. Okay. So a lot of stuff. So, but we said we will start adopting schools, and you can adopt schools only one by one. Later on, we talked to the government and said, there are about 58,000 schools, 48,000 primary schools in Karnataka, and the government has to deal with 48,000 applications. So that's not going to work. So we said we will adopt schools en masse. Okay, so we'll write a memorandum of understanding with the government and start adopting schools at a very large scale. And we will take responsibility for the social process of education in all these schools for every child in that school. Okay. So that was the assumption which we started. And and because we started with a facilitated model, and we started sitting with every one of the children. Anytime we adopt a school, we go sit with the children, talk to them, and find out what are their aspirations, what is it that they wanted to do, what will assist them in all this. And we find people from the local village, We find people at the local village, okay, and we get them to come to the school, sit and talk with the children, and we only find out whether the children comes happily to school. We had very simple guide for the people. Whether they are coming happily to the school or they have to be, somebody has to go and drag them to the school. And when we sit and start talking with the children, do the children start talking freely? Or do they have fear in their eyes? Okay. And we had a few simple steps like this, which anybody in the village could understand. Because if you walk into any villages, there will always be people who are child friendly. We've always found that. Okay. And then we bring them into the school environment and we train them, we tell them about some of the Shikshana policies and procedures, etc. And these people, we call them mentors. They're not field workers. They don't work for us. Okay. Though we pay them honorariums, we do compensate them for the work which they do. We don't call them workers. Okay. So they go and visit the schools, engage the children and start finding out. And in the beginning, both Ramurthy, the founder, and myself, we used to visit a lot of the schools. Before we actually arrived at the definition of a mentor, we would visit the school, sit with the children, and start talking to them and find out what are the things that we could pass on to others that they could do effectively. Okay. And it is by engaging the children directly that we discovered a lot of stuff. For instance, when we initially presented this plan saying that we were going to engage every child and talk, and they said you will not get people who are trained in child psychology. There are nobody available in the villages who understand child psychology, so you will not be able to hire them. When we started talking with children and we tried to find out who would be the best person to assist them in the learning, we would get names. Say that Channamma, who's there in the second house down the street, she's very good, we like listening to her, she tells us a lot of stories, etc. And so on and so forth. So then we would go meet Channamma and say, are you interested in working with the children? We found that for every position that we had vacant, there were 3 people who were equally qualified for doing that particular job. And we actually had a queue of people who said, we want to be part of Shikshana, we will do that. You don't even have to pay us any money. Okay? We'll come and do it. Because the effect of providing a local resource was so enormous, okay, that at last people in that village thought that school is now a happening place. So we did that. The next thing which we had to incorporate into that model is what is it that you give to children? And at that time, the government had given a list of all the things that the school needs to make it competitive with the other private schools so that children will start appearing. When we actually started sitting with the children and try to find out what is it that will make them come to school, what is it that will make them learn, our expenses, our total investment that is required to make sure that children are all learning very happily in that was very tiny. It was a shock. Okay. Are all the students here new? Because I'll relate one incident which I related last year. We were there in one of the, sorry if this is a repeat, but I think it's important just to drive home the point. I was there in one of the school where they pointed at a boy and said, this boy is a truant, he doesn't come to the school at all, he doesn't write homework, the usual complaints. Okay, he was in 4th standard. So I sat with that boy and was talking with him, and I did not see any evidence that the boy would be incapable of learning. It was the other way around. Okay. So the boy started pushing a lot of stuff with me. Then I told him, see, you talk a lot. Okay. But suppose if I tell you, I can give you anything you want. Okay. Will you be able to prove that you can learn? Then the boy looked at me and said, will you give me anything I ask you? Because this is something very new. You have to remember, you are talking about a village school where there are absolutely no facilities, etc. I said, will you give me anything that I ask? I said, I'll give you anything as long as you can show me that you can learn? Anything? Yes, anything. You won't go back on your word? No, I won't go back on my word. He looked at me and he thought for some time and said, will you give me 2 sheets of paper? I was totally taken aback. I didn't know what to say. Okay. Here I am arriving from Bangalore city, okay, as a head of an organization, and we are working with the funds in lakhs and lakhs, and all that the boy wanted from me was 2 sheets of paper. Then I asked him, then I said, okay, I will give you 2 sheets of paper. What will you do with the 2 sheets of paper? He said, I will go home and I will write. And I know this book, I will start writing from that book. Then I said, look here, you're in 4th standard, you're a smart boy, you can talk very well. And do you tell me that you can write only 2 sheets of paper? So the boy felt very offended. No, sir, I can write 5 sheets of paper. But you asked me only 2. Sir, then I asked him, why didn't you ask for 5? Sir, if I ask for 5, you may not have given me those paper. You don't look like somebody who will give me 5 sheets of paper. You know? See, that is the idea that children have, okay, of what is it that they can ask in school. So, of course, you know, we made sure that he got 5 sheets of paper, and I also told him, look here, I will give you 5 sheets of paper, and I will give you 5 more sheets of paper. Okay? So you write these 5 sheets of paper today, and then give it to the teacher, and then you have 5 empty sheets of paper with you. Then tomorrow you can write those 5 sheets of paper. Okay, and then go give it to the teacher, take another 5 sheets of paper. So at any given point, you have 5 sheets of paper in your bag. He was thrilled. He said, sir, if you are going to give me 5 more sheets of paper, I will write 10 sheets today. Will the teacher give me 10 sheets of paper tomorrow? I said, yes. You know, whatever you ask, the teacher will give you. I was thrilled. Two months later, the teacher told me that this boy attends the school regularly, and he writes around 20 sheets of paper, and he's become one of the most prodigious writer and reader in that school. Just took 2 months. So when we look at all interventions and we write our budgets and say how much money we need to do it, I think we are way off the mark on what it costs us. And when we operate at a 1,000 school level, 1.5 lakh children nearly, our per child investment is hardly around 300 to 350 rupees. Just think about it. Okay? If you sit with the children and if you provide them everything that they want to motivate them so that they can read, it just needs 350 rupees per year per student. I have never come across any investment plan, okay, so far that allocates 350 rupees per child just to assist children in learning. I've seen people investing lakhs into buildings, into shoes, into uniforms, books, cycles, toilets. We spend lakhs and lakhs of money into all this. Okay. Drinking water, salination plants, all the plants. So far, not a single student has told me that they are skipping school because the school does not have a toilet. They don't have a toilet at home also. So the idea is, if you focus on what is essential for the children and forget about all the frills, it is not an expensive affair. The pie in the sky model is not an expensive affair. Okay. The other part is, we, right from the beginning, after spending a lot of time, the first 2-3 years, we spent almost 100% of our time sitting with children and talking, then coming back and then modifying the model. And we decided to create a model which is totally decentralized. So as we started expanding we started with Bangalore, we moved to Kanakapura, then to Ramnagaram, then to Hubli Darbad, to Madanapalli in Andhra Pradesh, to Hyderabad, Pune, Bharuch in Gujarat, Bombay, Maharashtra, and all these places. As and when we start moving to many places and start adopting schools in those areas, we decided to do it in a highly decentralized forum. Okay, if you come to our headquarters, you'll not even find a chair to sit. The central office, sectional central office in Bangalore, is a very, very tiny place in this one. Okay. All these regions where children are where activity happens. It's an extremely decentralized form. This is the reason why we decided to push all the decisions and funds and allocations and budgets to all the regional offices. And we invested a lot in computers and communications. Okay. All our mentors carry a smartphone with all the communication expenses paid and everything. Okay, we do that. The reason why we do this is because when children get stuck, okay, they may not have a pencil, they may not have a paper, they may not have a book, or they just want to sit and talk with you for some time. Okay, none of this can be handled from Bangalore. Shortages cannot be fulfilled. The children don't wait. They cannot wait for more than a few minutes at a time. Okay. And the only reason, whenever they get stuck, okay, if we find that some student has not learned something for that day, we want that problem to be fixed the very next day. And that cannot happen if somebody is sitting in Hyderabad, has to create a budget and get approval from Bangalore to be able to purchase a sheet of paper or a pencil for the child. Okay, that's not going to happen. Okay, any mother knows this. Okay, if you have a baby, you need 40 diapers a day. Okay. You cannot. It's not a fungible number. Okay, you need a ready stock of diapers a day. You just cannot wait. You cannot wait for budget approvals. You cannot wait for annual cycles, budget cycles, etc. It's extremely decentralized. Every one of our mentor who visits the schools is authorized to spend. Okay, they would first spend. When they find a problem, they'd spend on the spot, and they'll find a solution on the spot before they come back and ask us for approvals. Okay, and when we did that, people said, they'll spend everything on a lot of frills and stuff, and we will not have control. Experience proves otherwise. Many of these, the fact that we authorized these mentors to go ahead and take decision on the spot and spend was also seen by parents and teachers. They understood the necessity for solving problems on the spot. So very often, when the mentors don't even go to the schools, the teachers would put money out of their own pocket and solve it. So a problem fixing which takes about 1 or 2 days would get filled within minutes. And later on, when the mentor goes there, the teacher would say, this is what I spent, and take reimbursement. So we actually ended up giving money to the teachers and to people in the local area where they said, fix it. Amount is very small. The amount of contingency fund that is required at the school level is about 50 rupees per child per year. That's the level of contingency fund that is required. Very small. Okay, so that part extremely decentered. So this improved the latency, and once we solved these two, that is, we made a child feel accepted and accommodated in the school environment. We made sure that the school, the mentors, teachers, and parents, etc., are responsive to the current needs of the children. And when things break, we would go fix it immediately. These three elements in that model gave us a huge boost, okay, in terms of being able to cover the learning gaps. So the annual cycle of assessment, which shows drops, 10%, from 50% last year to 60% every year, etc. Okay, that did not happen. What initially took us 1 whole year to make sure that at least 95% of the children in the school are able to read and write and get basic skills, slowly started getting reduced. Okay. So what used to take a whole year to fix will has started now slowly getting reduced. And the urgency, the sense of urgency, okay, was transmitted right to the fringes. So when teachers or parents or anybody, they encounter any student who is not able to read or write, they would treat it with a sense of urgency. So that part. So this model worked fairly well. When I talk about this model to others, I also get some questions from audience. So I will open up the thing for discussions. Before that, I will preempt. Okay, there are two frequent questions that I keep encountering. I'll just preempt that and let you deal with this. The first one was people said, yeah, this is all fine, but it will all work only in small schools. Okay. What if you have to deal with a 400 student school? This model will never work. Okay. People always cite the example. The best schools, education system is there in Finland. They say the best students. Every year, these students come up as some of the top. This one in Finland, and they say, well, it works because Finland is just 5 million students. Okay, the total is 5 million. We are 230 million. Okay, so it won't work. My question to that is always, if you want to look at 230 million, look at it as 46 Finlands. Can we create 46 Finlands? If you have a school, if you think you can make a 100-student school be perfect, and you have 400 students in your school, look at it as 400-unit schools. If you think you can be effective in a class with 20 students, and you have 60 students in your class, look at it as a class, as 3 classes with 20 students. This has worked very effectively. Okay, our school sizes range from about 20 children in one of the schools. There are schools with 300 children in them. There is a school in Chennapatna Girls' School. It's a high school. Okay. They had about 240, 300 students. And the standard response there was, everything is fine, but our school is large, and therefore around 40% of the children used to fail every year. Okay. Within 3 years after we adopted, the failures dropped to less than 10%. It's a perspective shift. The second question that I meet thing is, what about syllabus? What about curriculum? Do you send mentors? Do you have science teachers in your organization? Do you have maths teachers? We have this very good technique for teaching maths. We have very good technique for teaching science. We have all these kits for teaching science to students, etc. Okay. The answer that I have for that is, we are a child-centric intervention. We look at the world through the eyes of a child, not via subject or curricular lenses. A curriculum is what I want to tell you. Okay? And what I have to tell you will take me 1 year, and it will involve 6 subjects with 25 lessons in each. If you look at it through the eyes of the child, okay, when they see a sun rise, when they see a moon in the sky, when they see the harvest going on, it's an event. It's an event with very, very rich learning opportunities. What they absorb by looking at a harvest is related to the level at which they are today. And I'm sure that you must have experienced it in your own life. As a child, your house looked very big. Okay? House looked very big, and playground looked very big. And then you go stay in a hostel and you study for about 10, 12 years, and then come back, it looks as if the whole house is shrunk. Right? The same house, same swimming pool, same everything, but it seems to have shrunk. So the way you look at those events, the things which are around you, will change with respect to time. And that provides different learning opportunities. So we are not curriculum, this is taught. So if you look at students in Kanakapura, for instance, they look at silkworms, they look at silk cones. Okay. And for them, the mulberry leaves, that's a source of learning for them. Whereas if you go up north in Hubli or Dharwad, there it's a cotton growing area. The food is different, the dresses are different, the learning opportunities are very, very different. So if you learn to look at the learning environment through the eyes of a child, then it gives you a very different perspective. So with that, I look forward to hearing a lot from you. I was told that we have students, we are coming from all over India. Okay. I have not traveled much outside of the South India. So I do look forward to learning a lot about your own experience, let's say in Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, and other places. Tell me, go ahead. Yes.
I have two questions. And,
Is it recorded?
please raise your hand. So, sir, the question is, if recently you can see, I mean, we can see in media, either it be print media or e-media. So we are seeing that, I mean, the saffronization of the textbook is going to take place. Or it may take place or not, but it is in the news. So, sir, are they doing good or bad? So, I mean, how should we take it? Whatever they are showing us, so should we catch that, or just we should, I mean, how can we come out with this dilemma? And the second question is that, I mean, sir, if we compare with our country, I mean, compared to India with other BRICS nations or from some other nation, like in Brazil, there are only 10% students in primary level. There are only 10% students who go to the private school. But in India, there are 30% students who go to the primary school. So, and it is assumed that in coming years it may go to 40% or 45% or 50%. I mean, after 20 years, the situation might be that 50% of the students are going to the private schools. I mean, we are not effectively implementing the public schooling system. So, in coming years, we would be creating a two nation almost. I mean, some students will study in some Doon school, some in DPS, some in XY international school. Some would be studying in some government schools. So, generally quality might be different in those two schools. So, we would be creating two worlds, and I think they may be lagging behind compared to the students who are studying in some good schools. So, how can we do all this? And how can we remove all these obstacles?
Okay. Yeah, okay. Just to summarize your statement. The question is about the difference between education available in private schools and public schools, and are we creating a different strata of children by saying, by sending children to Doon schools and giving them very good education, or sending children to government schools and making sure that they get only the bare minimum. Okay. I know I used to feel very strongly the same way, about these things. But today, after working with children across, I have moved beyond the debate on whether education should be private, done by private or public, whether I get better education in a private school or a public school, purely for the reason that today, look at the numbers. Okay, I told you the numbers are all very large. No private institution has come forward so far to say that they will educate every student in a community. Okay, no one has so far come forward. Their capacity is limited. The amount of funds which a private institution can bring forward, okay, is limited by their own fundraising capability. That is why even after 60 years, more than 6 decades of allowing private schools to go ahead and educate children, 85% of the schools are government schools. Okay. So at best, these private institutions can only cover people who fall between the cracks in the public education system. So even today in India, it is a public education system which is carrying the weight. And that was one of the reasons why when we actually started with, we spread out to the village schools, and we said we'll work only with the government schools in that area. Because many of the schools which are there in the rural areas, particularly private, they were all started by people with very good intentions at one point in time. Over a period of time, that just decays. So since education is a 12-year effort and it has to occur over multiple generations, and we cannot afford to just walk away from it, it has to be public. The second question is, it is a myth that children who go to private schools get better education than children who go to government schools. And there are enough data that is available in the public. For some reason, media does not want to highlight this. If you have to take decisions based on actual data, okay, and I'm sure all of you are postgraduates, I'm sure that you'll all go with a database decision. That is not true. That is not true. Okay.
Second question, saffronization of books. Regarding saffronization of books, textbooks.
Textbooks. Okay. Textbooks. One interesting, I'll just relate on one incident with this thing of textbooks. You have to look at why do we have textbooks after all, Why do every student need to have a textbook? If you look at the history behind the textbooks originally started out as teacher's guide. Okay. They originally started out as a teacher's guide. Okay. And later on, when things started, when we had much better capacity, they said, we'll publish this stuff and give it out to all the children. So even if the teacher is not there, the children will learn by themselves from the textbook. But there is a huge difference in the ability to absorb things from a book by children and by teacher. As an adult, you can read a textbook and you can get a lot of information from it and be able to teach that to your little kid brother or sister. Okay. But it's not a substitute for a teacher. Okay. And therefore, all the things which are going on today, if you take any textbook, the first 5 pages are all about what a great, it's all addressed to the teacher. Right? And even the few lessons, at the bottom they'll say this is how it should be taught to the children, etc. Right? You see that history. So that is history. So as far as I am concerned, when we work with children, we don't look at the textbook at all. And in one particular instant, and one thing which I have noticed across children is they hate textbooks. I don't know about your own experience. What do you feel? From your own experiences, I'm not talking about the textbooks here at the university, please. they are, So what do you feel? What is the children's attitude towards textbooks? Yeah, I was there in one of the schools where I was talking with the best reaction which I got. I was talking to a girl who was deaf. Okay, and I was trying to come in, and the teacher said she's one who does not read. Okay,